I've always wanted a Harley. Well, I finally got myself a Harley. Although it wasn't exactly what I expected. May I introduce you to my Harley. I went to the optometrist a little while ago, and I promised that for a change I wasn't going to look at any prices or anything. I was just going to take frames, try them on, and pick up the one that I liked the best. And when I got to the cash, I noticed that they were Harley frames. So I'm constantly telling my coworkers that I'm bringing my Harley into work, even in the middle of the winter. And I love them. They're the first pair of glasses that I've ever had that have been just super comfortable. I can wear them for hours on end. And I don't know if the frame has made any difference. But, or maybe it was just the optometrist, this is the first time I've ever had a prescription where I feel it's closest to the eyesight that I remember I had when I was a kid. And everything is just so crystal clear with these. It's amazing. I love them. I love my Harley. Okay, I'm going to put my Harley away for the rest of the video. And I'm not going to wear them. Not for this video because they are bifocals. And I'm not quite used to them yet. And I find that sometimes I'm a little spatially disoriented when I'm wearing them. But that's just a matter of getting used to them. Something else I wanted to show you. But first, this can be a little bit clunky and not really the best for ASMR, but I thought it was so neat and it means so much to me. I thought that I would bring this out. But first, I'm going to put down this towel, and hopefully that's going to take away some of the noise. And I want to introduce you to that something special. This is something that my grandmother had, and she passed it on to my mother. And my mother recently gave this to me. I remember as a kid, even though these cameras, by the time I was growing up, these cameras weren't really being used. But my mother was quite the photographer, and she knew how to use this and use it properly, and she showed me how to use it, and I took a few photos with this growing up, probably back in the 1970s. I can't begin to tell you what the color difference is. We have the digital photography of today, but compared to the photography from back in this era, there's no comparison. The colors I remember were way more vibrant and truer to life than any digital camera that I've ever had. The greens on a pine tree were actually the greens of a pine tree that you would expect And when you took a photo of a flower, the colors were true when you got them developed. I still prefer the digital photography today for the fact of cost. If you took a photo with one of these cameras and it didn't turn out, it was still going to get developed and you were still going to get charged for it. There's a term that's used in photography, bracketing. A lot of photographers use that technique. You would take 3 or 4 photos with different aperture settings, slightly different aperture settings, or F settings, changing depth of field in that, and then they would just take the best one. However, that's not really something that an amateur photographer such as myself, who just plays with it, can really afford. That would get really expensive after a while. The difference between this and the 35mm cameras is the size of the film. The film was so huge. When you got the negatives back, you could make out the details of the photo without actually having to squint or magnify anything. The negatives were extremely large, and because the negatives were so large, it also meant that you got a lot more out of the photo before it could become grainy. The quality of the photo was just way better. I imagine the switch to 35mm was made because it was probably a lot cheaper, and the older film was extremely large and bulky. Before I put this away, I'll open this up to give you an idea as to exactly how large the film was. It helps to see it visually. This had a little plunger on the side, or has a little plunger on the side. And one thing that really captured my attention was back in the 1950s, my mother took a photo of herself using the plunger, and she was lying on the grass looking at the camera, and her sister was lying beside her. I'm thinking, that's a selfie. And I know that there were other people who did selfies before that, but it's not something that's really associated with the time and the film that my mother used. Being back in the 1950s, of course, it was in black and white, but it is such a memorable keepsake. I've had the photo digitally recreated, and I keep a copy of it for myself. I know it means a lot to my mother, and it definitely means an awful lot to me. I think it's magic. One thing I wanted to do, the reason why I have this camera out as well, is to actually give it a little bit of a cleaning as well. It's been sitting on a shelf and it's been collecting dust for a little while. So I have a little bit of lens cleaner here, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the Q-tip. And I'm just going to go over some of the glass here. Isn't that amazing? I just love this camera. And I'm not going to go over a lot here, just the glass pieces, just to clear out a little bit of the dust that's accumulated over time. Right here, at the bottom, these would be the F settings. could change your focal length just by sliding this. And that changes how wide the lens opens. And it changes your depth of field, which is when you focus, you can focus on just the actual subject, or if you change the focal settings, you can focus on the subject and everything else in the background. And this was a Kodak Junior. I went online to try to date this, and I believe that this particular model, based upon the type of lens, is probably from about 1918, somewhere around World War I. If I were to be able to find film for it today, and I might be able to, be extremely expensive, it would still work. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the functionality of the camera. And there are a couple of other features too. If you look along the side, right here, this hole, that's for the tripod. And one thing I've learned is that things have not changed very much. This fits a standard tripod of today. And I discovered that by actually trying to mount this on my own tripod, and I had no problem whatsoever. Another neat feature is this. It just looks like a metal plate, but this blew me away when I found out about it. This is a stylus. Reminds me of the Nintendo styluses. And this metal plate opens up, and you could get special film where you could actually, the back of the film crosses over here, and you could write something on here and it would show up on the photo in development. So you might want to print the date or a location or maybe the name of a person. That is super cool. And this looks like a little bit of oxide. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it looks like there's just a hint of green. That suggests to me copper, because usually when copper oxidizes, it's green. So it would probably be coming from the metal plate from up above. Oh yeah. You can see how that Q-tip is turning dark. So there's some dirt here. I'm surprised it even had a chance to oxidize, because this is kept in a cool and dry environment. My apartment is quite well aired. The environment is quite controlled. This red dot here, when you take a photo, you wind the film, and your next shot, the number, shows up right here. So if you had, let's say, a 36 shot roll, if you took picture, a number would show up here, which is actually on the film. And if the number is 12, it means you have 12 shots left. So you would know when you were running out of film. And I'll put this back. In the hole on the other side here is another hole for a tripod. So you could take photos in different ways. I'm just going to give this a little spritz. Yeah, there's some dirt in there. I like to keep this clean. And I give it a dusting. You can see the dirt coming off onto the Q-tip. And you could shoot with the plunger. And the viewfinder is at the very top. When you're looking through the viewfinder, you're not seeing through the lens. You're seeing through this lens just above it. So the further you are away from your subject, the more accurate the photo is going to be. An odd thing about shooting through using the viewfinder is that your image is inverted. So you're looking at the subject upside down. A little plate on the bottom, Canada. Kodak Company Limited. There's still quite a number of these cameras around. I don't think they would be horribly expensive to buy. But good luck in getting film for it, and it might even be more of a challenge finding somebody who would be able to develop the negatives today and actually turn them into photos. It is a beautiful camera, though. There are grips along the base here, and there's a button right here. And if I press it, I can move this. Back into the case. Back in you go. And this has always been a challenge for me. Because it locks once it's open. And the only thing that is missing on this camera, as far as I'm aware, so there used to be a strip of leather here. I don't know if it was brown or black. I just guessed to say that it was probably black, the same color as the rest of the camera, but this thin strip was just glued on. You can see the remnants of the glue that held it on. And I just have a duster, a disposable duster. front of the camera. Do you want to see the back? Why don't we? There are a couple of buttons along the side on the back, and if I squeeze them, I can take this right off. And this is actually where the film goes in, right here. And the film is really that wide. And you pull it over here, and a tab goes in here. And you wind it. And so the actual size of the negative is the size of this rectangle. Vastly different from the old 35mm cameras. So now you know why this is so special to me. Not an expensive antique, and I'm not afraid to handle it. I don't like keeping things that I can't touch or can't use. I'm not a collector in that sense. And something like this that I grew up with, yeah, I still want to be able to look at it, take it apart, clean it up a little bit, and showcase it every once in a while. I do have this out on a vintage coffee table. Now let's see if I remember how to put this back together. There we go. And click. Looks like everything's in place now. And I love the font. The old Kodak font. Very few people use actual photographic film, but there's still some people. I've been on a few commercial shoots with television stations, especially during my first time around in college. And if you think the negatives are large with this, they pale in comparison to what the professional photographers use. So a cherished memory. And I keep very good care of it, despite the fact that I still hold it and open it up every once in a while. I do like to keep very good care of it. And still, the original leather strap on it. And you might not be able to see it, no, not on video, but it actually says Kodak right on the handle. There you have it. This is how you roll the film through. A lot of great memories in this camera, and I'll cherish it forever. It's one of the few times where I actually have a belonging that means so much to me that I wouldn't get rid of it. I'm not a person who likes to have possessions or have things. I already have enough in my life, and I'm quite content with everything that I have. I don't need more. Okay. Thank you so much for viewing the video. Before I go, I want to remind you to pay it forward to all of those other video ASM artists that are out there. If you watch a video and you like a video on another channel, hit like, hit subscribe. If somebody has a Patreon channel and you really want to support them, a Patreon subscription is a great way to do that. I don't have a Patreon account. I have no intentions of getting one. Not at this time. Like I said, if I ever made any money, I'd probably wind up giving it away anyway. And on that note, after inviting you to pay it forward and supporting your favorite YouTube channels with the like or subscribe, I'm going to say, have yourself a great night, and I can't wait till we can do this again. Remember, you're awesome, you're a wonderful person, you're a beautiful person. Good night from North Bay, Ontario.